My slides are not forwarding. Come on. So first of all, what is a superbloom? Well, it's not really, I look it up, it doesn't really have a real strong meaning, but basically to have a superbloom, we need to get regular rain starting in fall. And in 2018, the rain started a little late, but it has to be pretty steady. In other words, there can't be a period of too much drying out in between the rains, which we also had, and it needs to go through early spring. The other thing it needs to have is a relatively cool season without major heat waves. And I don't know if you remember, but in 2018-19 winter, we didn't have any Santa Anas, which really helps with the super bloom situation because all the little plants, all the annuals that come up can keep growing without being stopped suddenly. And then the main thing for super bloom is it really just means more flower blooms than is usual for a season. And it can be localized or can cover a vast area. For example, I think it was 2017, we had a big drought, maybe it was 18, and there was actually a super bloom up at Lake Cuyamaca that nobody much heard about, but they had some freak rains in the right time, and they had an incredible bloom where no one else had any flowers at all. So it can be localized, but in 2019, it was vast. I mean, it covered the whole southern half of California, maybe even all the way up into Northern California, but the best flower shows were definitely down on our end of the state. And the total amount of rain can vary. We weren't actually particularly wet last year for normal. We were above normal, but not incredibly a lot. We've had much wetter years than last year, but it's the frequency. So the rains have to be kind of steady and not a lot of time to dry out. The other thing though that helps us is we actually live in a biodiversity hotspot. San Diego County has more species of plants than any county in the United States outside of Hawaii, native plants. So I'm going to try to walk you through some things that aren't poppies here. We'll say when I tried to put this together, I went and looked to see how many places I went specifically either for a hike or to look at flowers last year. I thought it was going to be around 10. It was 25. So there was a lot of places to go in San Diego, and I barely scratched the surface. And I had to whittle thousands of photos down to just a few, which is really hard. So we're going to start at Mission Trails Regional Park. You should be familiar with that park. It's where Cowles Mountain is. Over on the eastern or western side, there's a trail there that comes out of a neighborhood, and I just heard these flowers were in bloom. And this is called the chocolate lily. It's very rare. It doesn't bloom every year. And somebody was so worried they were going to get picked, but I got out there and found them. And they were really secretive on, it's on Facebook where I get all this. Really secretive about where they are. You had to talk to somebody, you had to talk to somebody. Anyway, they told me where they were. They weren't very hard to find, and they weren't picked. But anyway, this is just an incredible lily-like plant that comes up with these bell-shaped flowers. It's incredibly rare. And that was in February. So that was kind of a warning that something was going on that was going to be a little different. Right after that, we were hearing about Borrego. And Borrego started really early in February. There was a freak rain shower on the eastern side of Borrego back in August with sort of a flash flood, and then all those later rains. So the east side of the desert bloomed in February, which usually we don't really get a good bloom till March. And everybody went out there, and the main flowers they were looking at were this white evening primrose, fields of those, a lot of sand verbena. And the other one is it's a poppy, but it's not California poppy. It's Parrish's poppy. It looks a lot like the California poppy. It's a little bit shorter, a little bit brighter yellow. And there was, that one's mixed in. So these are the big three, but there are so many more. And this is the one I was looking for. This is one of my favorite wildflowers in the desert. It's the Desert 5 spot. That flower is only about an inch across, but it's just incredible with that hot pink and orangey red coloration on it. Little itty bitty thing down on the ground. You really have to hunt for these. And then to make it more fun, they're only open when the sun is out. So you find them, and if it's cloudy or too early in the morning or too late in the afternoon, you still don't get to see these. Also out there are tons of, pardon my Latin, I know all my plant names from online, so I've rarely heard them said, which makes it kind of fun. So if you want to correct me, feel free. Felicia. Anyway, desert bluebells. There's a lot of different species of these out in the desert, but this is one of the most beautiful ones. Has these nice hanging bell-shaped flowers and a very nice blue. And then another one a lot of people look for out there are these desert lilies. They bloom most years, but some years they're really short. But in 2019, they were really tall, and there were really a lot of them, and they were really easy to find. Sometimes you have to hunt and hunt for them. And then further east, this is in March now, the sand dunes at Ocotillo Wells, where it was 109 degrees yesterday. It was covered, the sand had many different flowers in it, but one that really stood out was this desert sunflower just growing straight out of the sand dunes. And then these continued out across the desert. And as far as you could see, there was just this yellow haze across the flat desert below the sand dunes. So it was really quite striking. And if you hunt around, you find some weird things in the desert. The cactuses usually bloom later. This is a little fishhook cactus, and it's growing straight out of a crack in a giant granite boulder. And one interesting thing about this cactus is it grows in Borrego, and then it skips the mountains, skips the inland valleys, and shows up back again on our coast. So it's got a very unusual range of where it shows up. There's a few other plants that do that, but this one in particular, this is in Torrey Pines as well, and also down into some of the valleys over here on our side of the county, but it's quite prevalent in the desert. And I've tried to grow this, and I've killed all of mine now. I have none of them. I did have some that went for a while, but this year was a little bit unusual in the rain, and my last one rotted. So in March, Scott and I decided we wanted to go see some of the poppy fields, and we were hearing about them, but Temecula was kind of crowded. So we went to a place we'd never been before. It's Rattlesnake Canyon in Poway. This is on the side of Mount Woodson. And we were really surprised that there was water flowing over this old dam. I mean, it was really kind of beautiful. We got lost. It was a cloudy day, so the poppies weren't open. And we lost our trail, and we got stuck, and we couldn't figure out our way out. And we're walking around going through this thick chaparral, and I noticed underneath there were peonies. California has a native peony. Not many people know that. And it is California peony, Peonia californica. Any rate, I'm lifting it up here. If you know peonies, you recognize the flower parts with 3 seeds and all. And if you ever want to get rich, you need to go find these plants, learn how to grow them, and cross them with other peonies so we can all grow big flowered peonies in our yards, because you cannot grow the ones that everybody grows back east here because they need more of a winter chill. But this one doesn't need a winter chill. It's kind of spread across California, but one of the big hotspots for it is right here in San Diego. It doesn't show up every year. It only shows up on rainy years, and you really have to hunt for it. But it is about 1.5 feet tall, and it's been around a few years. Recently, because we've had some rainy springs. Another flower that was out there was this cute little California sun cup. And then Iron Mountain. I've been going to Iron Mountain for about 10 years, maybe a little longer, a hike every year in late February to early March. And it all burned in 2003. The entire backcountry bloom then burned. And what came back was ceanothus. So Iron Mountain is totally cloaked with ceanothus that after, 10, 15, 13 years since the fire, is now over your head. And so you walk through these canyons of blue ceanothus to get up to the top of Iron Mountain. Then every year, did not go this year. It was closed because of the virus. So I was really disappointed to miss it because I heard there was a really great bloom out there. There's some other interesting wildflowers out there. One is this Southern Mountain Misery. This plant is much better known in the Sierras, Sierra foothills. It's a slightly different species than ours. Ours is very rare, but it has this beautiful white flower. I've never seen it grown anywhere but in the wild on Iron Mountain. It's very rare. And another rare one is this Styrax, snowdrop bush. This one also goes up into the Sierra foothills, and it is the same species as ours. And I think the only place it grows in our county is on Iron Mountain, which is kind of weird because it's not up at a high elevation or anything. It's just there on the side of the mountain. It looks a little like a camellia when you come up on it. It's got, these leaves are a little bit shinier than the picture shows, and these are about 1.5 inches to 2 inches long, these little white flowers, and they really get your attention. I'm told you can grow this in a garden, but I've never seen anybody grow it here. And then a little plug, everybody always goes to Torrey Pines. I love Torrey Pines. I prefer it over the desert actually, but people don't know about this place. It's Scripps Coastal Preserve. It's very near Torrey Pines. It's in La Jolla Farms, and you go into the entrance of La Jolla Farms, and it's a few houses in. There's a dead-end street on the left, and you can go out there, and there's a path that takes you along the cliffs. And in the spring, it's phenomenal with wildflowers, and you get the same views as Torrey Pines. You don't get the Torrey Pines, but you do get these wonderful views and you get some incredible flowers. And that little cactus I just showed you, it grows here. And there's also a desert, another desert cactus that grows there, the coastal barrel cactus. One of the few places it grows is in this preserve. And there's a few other rarities in there. But the main flower is this one, which is, I'm going to call it by its old name, Coreopsis maritima. Most people know the giant Coreopsis, which grows on I-5 there and up into LA, that has the big trunk and it comes out of nowhere with those big bushes. That Coreopsis grows along LA County and up into Malibu and on the coastal islands. But in San Diego, we actually have a slightly different species, which is this maritima one. And we're kind of the hot spot in the world for it. About the only place it grows is on our coastline here in San Diego. Has the same giant blue, yellow flowers. Those flowers are about 6 inches across, 4 to 6 inches across. And has this nice ferny foliage, and it totally disappears. It's a perennial, but the foliage all dries up and you don't even see the plant in the summer. Back over to Mission Trails. This is a little later in the year. In Mission Trails, this is a very common flower that you may recognize, Mimulus. It's also got a new name. The biologists are renaming everything. Sticky monkey flower. It's almost always orange or reddish orange, but there's some pink ones there right on the road, which are really, really rare. And I took some cuttings and was unable to root any of them. So this year it was closed. I want to go back. I even know where it is. I want to find this plant and try to root it again, because Mimulus, I don't know if you know this, Mimulus are very easy to root during the rainy season. You just break them off and stick them in the ground and they often grow. But you really shouldn't be taking them out of parks, but whatever. Also in Mission Trails, we have 2 native clematis, which surprises a lot of people to San Diego County. The one is this Virgin's Bower. And really, you know these for their seed heads. They have these big seed heads that are white and fluffy that look like something out of Dr. Seuss. But they also have beautiful yellow flowers. Flowers don't last very long, and they are a vine. They crawl up through the chaparral. Usually you miss them, but you notice them later on when the seed heads show up. And just to show that we did find some fields of poppies, this is Scott taking a picture of some of the poppies there in Mission Trails. Actually, though, the entire canyons, any place that the chaparral was cut away or missing for some reason, it was covered by poppies last year, which I've never seen that before.
Jim, real quick, I don't know if everyone sees the chat, but the question is, do you use your phone's your phone's camera for these photos?
I bought a camera last May. So all of them from May on are on my camera. And before that, they're on my iPhone. And I've since bought the iPhone 11, or was it 12, whatever. I bought it at Christmas or New Year's this year. And it takes superior pictures to my camera. So I'm back to the iPhone. I really like the iPhone because they're easy to download and manipulate and everything. So it's kind of half and half. You'll probably see a difference. I'll have a lot more close-ups because my camera took really good close-ups. But the new iPhone takes better close-ups than my camera does. So I was really kind of shocked at that. And I can do telephoto and things that you couldn't do on iPhones until the 11 came out. Anyways. So one of the reasons we didn't look for poppies, this is our back hill last year. I had planted poppies for about 4 or 5 years, and somehow they all ended up at the bottom of the canyon last year, and they came up everywhere. In fact, they were almost weedy. They were about up to 3 feet long. And we had our own little Superbloom down here. These are all California native plants that grow on our hill. Many of which I planted, I will say. They didn't just all show up. And this also is our garden. So you could go down there any day in March and it was quite phenomenal. This year was very good too. Not quite as good, but boy, I'm just now ripping out the poppies. They cover up everything. They're amazing how they come up. One of my other favorite places in San Diego County is Cedar Creek Falls. Cedar Creek Falls, this entire area also burned in 2003. And what came back, and still coming back, is the chaparral came back. But while it's been coming back, there's been some incredible flower displays out there. And this is a hike over to the San Diego River. And there's a waterfall on the San Diego River that I'll show you here in a minute. But this is just the view. It's incredible out there. These big scenic mountains. It's a trail down into the canyon. And this white flowered bush here, kind of pale yellow, is a cherry. It's Prunus ilicifolia. And it does set cherries on it. They're about the size of a regular cherry. The problem is they're almost all pit. They don't taste too bad, but they're not great. They're too much work for what they are. But anyway, when it's in bloom, and it smells wonderful. I mean, this also grows on our hillside here in Mission Hills. Came with our property. I actually weed this out. I have so many come up. I didn't even know they were here for the first 10 years we lived here. And when we had our chaparral bin, when we recited for fire, I was like, what's this bush? And I had to go look it up. And it turned out they were cherries. And I was very surprised to hear that. There's some doubt the cherries that are here on our property are the same plant. They might be the one from the Channel Islands. And the only reason a lot of people say that, the native plant people, when they come around, is that they planted the one from the Channel Islands in the Presidio back in the 30s. And I'm only a mile from the Presidio, 2 canyons away. Did they end up on our property too? I don't know, nobody really knows. And I can't tell the difference between the 2 plants. One is supposed to have, they call it the holly leaf cherry. It's supposed to have leaves that look like a holly. Actually, the ones in the inland, to me, the leaves look less like a holly than mine look like. So I don't know if I really have the native one that's native or the one from the Channel Islands. But anyway, they've naturalized. They come up everywhere.
And is this what you see? A question is, do you see this along 79 towards Lake Cuyamaca? Have you seen them there?
Yes, they're definitely there. Theirs looks a little different than this one, though. I noticed that it's really dense there, going through there on 79. Yeah, they're down right before you do the windy climb up to Stone Peak on the Stonewall on the road. There's tons of them right there. We might get a cat here in a second. Anyway, this is Cedar Creek Falls. It is the tallest waterfall in San Diego. Sorry, I was trying to mute it.
And where is that exactly?
Well, this is the San Diego River, and you go out to Ramona. I forget the name of the subdivision, and you need a permit from the National Forest because it's a Cleveland National Forest. And it's about a 3-mile hike from the parking lot, and it's not the easiest hike. And you also cross the San Diego River 3 times, which that means you wade. And it's not scary. The river's only about, it doesn't get up to your knees, but you could fall, but you're only going to get wet, and the river's not running fast enough to knock you down. But it's really kind of a cool hike. It's totally closed this year. They closed it early on. It's been out of control for a while. The National Forest, you used to be able to just go out there, but we were on a couple Sunday or weekends 10 years ago, and there were people jumping off the cliffs. There have been quite a few rescues there. And this year, because of the virus, they just shut the whole thing down. So you can't even go there right now. There's a second trail that comes to it from the east side, but I've never done it because it's like an 1.5-hour drive to get there. And the head for this trail is only an hour. So, you can spend more time in the car or whatever. You can just drive there. But anyway, it is our tallest waterfall in San Diego. It's incredible. It's got this beautiful bowl down here at the bottom that I don't think I can back it up. Oh, I can. Oh, look at that. That's a person. Give you an idea how big it is.
Oh, how much of the year is there water in it?
It does go dry some years. It hasn't gone dry the last couple of years because of the rain, but it diminishes significantly. I've never been there on a dry year, though. I only go on rainy years, so it's always been really great. The first time we went, actually, it was a little too great, though it was kind of scary crossing the river. I do remember that, but the other times we've been, it hadn't been too bad. You just have to be sure to take shoes and walk in the water with, because it's got a rock and sand bottom. It's not like mossy or anything, so it's not slippery, but you're out barefoot if you don't carry water shoes. But it's a beautiful hike out there, and it's wildflowers the whole way. And this was there near the river. This is a different ceanothus. There weren't a lot of them, but there were some there. And there's also quite a few trees down there. And then we're going to jump. I'm not sure this is San Diego County. Anybody been to Eagle Rock? It's up near Warner Springs. I have a suspicion that this isn't totally natural occurring, that somebody's played with these rocks a little bit. And you can tell a lot of people go there because there is no vegetation around it. Everybody walks around it. But the trail out there, you start over at Warner Springs off of the highway, and you have to walk through the woods to get there. The first half is wooded, and there are these beautiful flowers called Chinese houses, which I've known about for years, but I've rarely seen, and they were just incredible. And then mixed in with them, see this bright blue flower?
Oh, beautiful.
This was mixed in with baby blue eyes. Usually baby blue eyes is pale blue, but for some reason they were this dark, dark blue out there. And these were everywhere. And there were many, many other wildflowers, but these were the two that stood out. From there, you go over to Cuyamaca, Lake Cuyamaca. Around the lake, they had a bloom of cream cups. Cream cups are related to California poppies. They're much, much smaller. I've got another picture of them coming up later. And also out there last year, we had a super bloom of meadow foam. Meadow foam is usually associated with the Sierras. It blooms in all the like wetland areas around lakes. That's Lake Cuyamaca back here in the background. And this is meadow foam, and you can see how it got its name. It's just these seas of white coming off this really dark green grass and other things that grow there. And that was unusual. I've never seen that plant out there before, and everybody from Sierras goes, oh, that's meadow foam, but I didn't even know we had it in San Diego. Also out there on Sunrise Highway, heading back up towards Mount Laguna, we have a huge stand of Western Redbud, which blooms also bloomed in April last year. It's already done this year. We were up there a couple of weeks ago. It's already done blooming, which most people don't even know exists here. We have our own native redbud tree. This redbud is more common in Central California than here, but there are stands of it in both on this road here, and then there's some up in Palomar as well. And then behind it there, this is white ceanothus, which we were up there last week, and the entire mountain is covered with white ceanothus right now. It's quite something. And an odd thing about it, it came up after the fires and is very dense. And the national, the forest management people are worried about it, and they're actually cutting it down. They're worried it's going to cause more fires, and they were burning some of it as well when we were there last week. It's very controversial because it's all over Cuyamaca, and it's really beautiful, and they're cutting it down. They claim it's keeping the pines from coming back. Back over to Cuyamaca, though, Green Valley Falls, another big set of waterfalls. Here's Scott. I think we were out there, no, May 27th is Mother's Day. There was nobody there the day we were there, and it was really roaring. We could also rain that day, though. We had rain a year ago on this date, believe it or not. And we did a hike up around one of the hills there, and we came back, and in the parking lot at the campground, there were bobcats hunting squirrels, and we got really close to them. I couldn't believe they'd let us get so close. We saw one, and then we didn't think, you know, that was really exciting. We were really excited, and then we were walking over the falls, and there was another one. It was even bigger. So the campground was closed last year because they're redoing it, and it's closed this year because of the virus. So anyway, the wildlife has definitely moved into the campground there. He's a really beautiful cat.
He is beautiful.
Anyway, so on the hike there, this is a pretty prevalent plant. It blooms kind of early though. It was in bloom in May last year for some reason. It's related to the Indian paintbrush, but it's purple, and you usually see it in large fields. And then there is also golden yarrow. If you look around inland, often along roads and trails, you see this bright yellow plant right now. It's, I'm not even gonna try to say the name, but at any rate, it's very bright yellow. You can actually grow this pretty easily in your garden. The only downside is it really hates summer water, and it's totally deciduous, which is kind of sad because it looks really dead. In the first rain, it comes back and is really beautiful, and it's such an incredible yellow. And I use this picture because it had this really nice little beetle in it. And also out there, the Cuyamacas are very well known for their manzanilla. People that, us in San Diego, I don't even pay attention to manzanita, but apparently we're in the hot spot of the world for manzanitas. I did not know that till recently. And the hot spot of that is our local mountains. There's very many species, but this is a late blooming one, beautiful pink flowers. And these are followed by some pink berries, which I don't think I have a picture of. This plant's kind of sprinkled all around San Diego. It's related to tomatoes. It's in the nightshade family. And you have to pick the flowers up and put your hand under there and turn them, and you get to see this green rim, which there's quite a few other nightshades, but this is the only one that has this beautiful green rim under here. And then we have several native peas. I can't tell them apart, but I think this one is the canyon sweet pea. To me, they all look alike. Um, we have a couple species that only grow in San Diego County, though this one is pretty much everywhere in Southern California, the chaparral. It climbs over the chaparral, smells just like sweet peas, and it looks just like sweet peas, but it's totally native. We also have a native honeysuckle. This is it in bud. It isn't a vine though, it's a bush. I got a picture of it later in bloom in another place. The Western wildflower, this plant is very heavily distributed across the West. It goes all the way up to Canada and into the Rockies. And it grows here in our local mountains. And we saw these last week in bloom in Mount Laguna. There's several species of monkey flowers that grow in San Diego, but this one is Mimulus is the more common name. This Diplacius, I don't know how to say it. That's the new name, but they changed it. Anyway, Clevelandii. And the reason it's called Clevelandii is it grows in the Cleveland forest. So this is native only to San Diego County. And it's a beautiful yellow. It's a little more tender looking than the other Mimulus you see. And we saw quite a bit of it last weekend. We did the same hike as Green Valley hike last week. And there was quite a bit of it there again this year. This is woolly blue curls. It's somewhat of a fire follower. It has incredible flowers when you get up close, but this is about 5 times the size of the flower. It has very fragrant foliage when you rub it. It smells kind of fruity. It's pretty well dispersed across San Diego. You see it in a lot of places that have burned maybe 10 years ago. Probably don't notice it the rest of the year. I've got a couple of them growing in the garden that I actually bought at Home Depot last year, and I've kept them alive. I've killed this plant quite often. They often sell it at nurseries in the spring because it is really beautiful and really pretty blue, and it does have a nice woolly look to it. But they are really hard to get established. If you miss watering, they die, and then if you water them the wrong time of year, they also die. So I'm kind of excited that I had 2 make it through last summer, and they're blooming again this year. They're not blooming as well as the ones in the wild, but they are blooming. Anyway, this is everywhere out there. It doesn't photograph well as a bush though, so I didn't put any of those in there. It's a little too wispy, but when you're out hiking, it really jumps out at you. Checker blooms, these cover most of California. We have a couple species native to San Diego County exclusively. The one thing I noticed about them here is some are very soft pink and then some almost go to a purple, and this one's kind of in between. They're these long wand-like flowers, about 1.5 feet long, and have little mallow flowers on them. Those flowers are probably about 1 inch. And there's usually quite a few of them, and they really stick out. They move in the wind too. Back in the mountains, we have a lupin. This is one of the few lupins I can recognize. All the lupins to me look just alike. I can't tell them apart, even though there's many, many species of them. This one is grape soda lupin, and the only reason I can recognize it is it smells like grape soda. And this is a picture of it last week up on highway going through the Cuyamacas. So it's in full bloom right now. There's huge stands of us. I think they're actually better this year than they were last year up there. The April rain must have really hit them at the right time. Kind of to the north of Cuyamaca, there's a mountain called Garnet Peak. Garnet Peak is starts in the woods, of pine woods, and then goes up and becomes granite. Even though it's called Garnet, it's a huge granite mountain. And it has a really wonderful view of the desert. I'd always wanted to hike that, and we hiked it last year in June. So we were still out there hiking in June, which is really rare. This just looked like a garden. I mean, it looked like somebody planted this. It's just a side of mountain. Oh, and this is woolly blue curls, this purple stuff here in the foreground. That's the way it looks as a bush. But there was a lot of buckwheat out there. Southern California in particular, buckwheats are kind of our dominant plant here starting about now. And this will turn to a nice rust and then a red later on. And they're kind of everywhere. There's also quite a few erigerons. I know these as daisies. I can't tell them apart. They all look alike. I looked them up online. Every picture to me looked identical to every other one. But that was one of them. We have a native thistle. We have quite a few non-native thistles, but our native thistle is a little prettier than most. It's much better pink. And that one always draws butterflies. didn't put it in here, but I have a video of swallowtails on it taken a couple weeks ago. The other thing that was interesting up there is chamise. Chamise is not a very exciting shrub. It's a fire follower. It gets pretty tall, just doesn't do much for me. And there's a lot of chamise in San Diego County, but because of the rains last year, it bloomed this incredible white. And yeah, I got a pictures. Well, there's some more pictures of it coming up. This is a bush poppy, or it gets about 6 feet tall. There's 2 species of it. The one that grows wild here is rigida. It grows in our mountains. Along the coast here, though, we grow the one from the Channel Islands. I've got quite a few in the garden. They get about 8 feet by 8 feet. Blooms about 6 to 7 months out of the year. It has big yellow flowers, 1.5 to 2 inches across. Sets tons of seed, but it doesn't come up much. The only downside to it is it is a little sensitive to summer water. If you water it too much, you can kill it. But it does like some summer water. And if you don't give it some summer water, it goes deciduous on you, which is not very attractive. Mine gets some leaf burn, but the first rain it leaves back out. It has a nice blue-gray foliage to it. The one from the Channel Islands has bigger foliage in this, and it's really a lovely plant. Good background plant. I wouldn't put it in the front in your garden, partly because it gets so big, but mine's been blooming since February, and it's been still in full bloom. This is back to chamise. So this is, if you go up Highway 8 and you turn on Sunrise Highway, you'll start winding up in the mountains, and there's a pullout on the right. Right now, there's tons of construction crew there because they're repaving the road, but this was a year ago, and we stopped there I just said, Scott, looks interesting. We were going somewhere else. He said, let's just stop. So we stopped. All this pale yellow is chamise, as far as we could see. So incredible sight. We're standing there though, and I thought, I hear chainsaws. Why would I hear chainsaws? There's nobody out here. And it like came from this valley over here, and it came towards us, this noise, and it got closer and closer, and it went by us. They were locusts. I did not know, or cicadas. I did not know we had cicadas in California. If you live back east, you know what cicadas are. Anyway, we have a native cicada, and they do these waves of noise. One of them makes a noise, the next male makes a noise, and it travels. So while we were there, we heard several waves of these cicada songs going by us. They really do. They sound like chainsaws. You're like, what on earth is making that awful noise? But it's this lovely insect. And this is what the chamise looked like out there. So that whole hill back in the background here, that is all this bush as far as you can see. So it's a big fire follower out there. Also though, in this pull-off, this is in the like hell strip on the road, was one of my favorite flowers. This is Mariposa poppy, Calochortus weedii. It's called weedii not because it's weedy. The man who it's named after was named Weed. And it's one of my favorite wildflowers, and there's a lot more pictures of it coming up. And it has a lot of variability. It has these lovely little hairs in its flower often. Well, if it's weedy, it definitely has the hairs. And it often has these dark spots, and they vary a lot. And then you can get spots on the petals, or you can get a whole brown petal. Anyway, we were headed that day to a lake in the woods. This is part of Lake Cuyamaca, or Laguna Lake, but it's not actually Laguna Lake. It's the one next to it. And anyway, it's a beautiful spot there. It backs up to the pine trees. Scott's doing something in the kitchen. So we're doing this hike, and the very first thing we find is another Mariposa lily, and this one's a different color. This one's very clear and clean. And we found more of it, and I love this. This one's purple, and this one's pink. So it's got a lot of variability, but it's a very clean and crisp flower. And here's some other close-ups of it. I just think this is just a wonderful, these are impossible to grow in your garden. I've never seen anybody be able to grow them, but they're everywhere in the wild last year. And usually you're lucky if you find one or two. And last year there were hundreds of them. I showed this plant a little earlier, but there were also these wonderful California thistles out there. These really pull in our native swallowtails. They almost always have native swallowtail butterflies on them, which the swallowtails are as big as the flower. We have a native viola. We actually have several species of native violas. And this one is the pine viola because it was in the pine woods. And it looks just like a pansy you'd grow in your garden. It's the same size flower and everything, except for it's got these hairy, leathery leaves on it. And it must be a really tough plant. Golden fields were in bloom. Golden fields is pretty common, especially up in Central California and Central Valley. And this is it up here in Cuyamacas, going up to the woods. There was just tons of this everywhere. This is a Clarkia called rhomboidea. And I love the name. It's because the flower is the shape of a rhomboid, if you remember your geometry. But the common name is diamond Clarkia. This is a really small flower, but they're really cute when you get up close. Another species of Mariposa was up there. I didn't even know about this one, never even heard of it before. I had to look it up. Concolor, it's this beautiful bright yellow, has a little bit of hair in it and a little bit of a burgundy stripe in there, but it's different than the weedy eye. You can tell them apart if you see them enough. And then kind of surprised to see this growing up there in the pine woods. There was a Puntia, prickly pear. And this is actually the Mojave prickly pear. It covers a huge swath of the desert. And here it was growing up in the Cuyamaca with beautiful yellow flowers. Another lupin, no idea which one. Did you know we have native delphiniums? I did not know this. I knew about them, but I've never seen them. They were not in great profusion in Cuyamacas last year, but there were a few. Definitely looks like something you'd want to grow in your garden if you could. I mean, they look just like any other delphinium. And then this one kind of surprised me. I kept looking at these irises going, this iris looks so unlike a California iris. It's definitely not the normal one. Well, it turns out it's Iris missouriensis, missouriensis, I don't know how to say that. Anyway, it gets the name not from the state of Missouri. It gets it because it grows along the Missouri River in the Rocky Mountains. And it turns out it's also native to Lake Cuyamaca. I mean, what's the chance of that? I've also seen this in the Rockies. There were big fields of that down around the lake. And then I never know how to say this, Brodea. Anyway, I know these bulbs from Northern California. We have quite a few different species here in San Diego. You don't see them very often, but there were hundreds of these out there that day. And unfortunately, I can't tell you the species because when I look them up online, it's another one. They all look alike to me. Every one of them has this blue. Sometimes there's more white in here. That's the only differences I could see in the flowers was how much white was in the flower. So at any rate, these you can grow. I see the bulbs for sale occasionally in bulb catalogs. I've tried them. I've never had it succeeded, but I do know other people that have grown them. This can grow in your garden as long as you keep it dry in the summer. It does fine. Another Clarkia. This is wine cup. It's got this gorgeous burgundy. This really jumps out at you. This flower is only about an inch across, but it really stands out. This is all over San Diego County. Once you know about it, you see it everywhere when you look into the chaparral. It's always around. This amazing flower took me a while to figure out. To me, it looks like a mountain phlox. I actually had to go to the California native plant people and go, what is the name of this? It's not coming up anywhere. And that is the name, Leptosiphon floribundus. This right now is in bloom in large masses up around Cuyamaca Mountain. It's all along the roads. They also call it snow in summer. The flowers are so dense, it looks like snow. These flowers are about an inch across. It's a low growing bush, about a foot tall. Vulcan Mountain. Vulcan Mountain is a fairly new wilderness. It opened up, I don't know, since I've lived in San Diego. It's up near Julian. We went up there July 4th. We only saw like 2 other people. Another Mariposa lily, a different one, grows there. It's this beautiful pink one. It has these wonderful blue stamens. There's also another, this one was also in my earlier picture, but this Mariposa also grows up there. This is more cream cups. They were finishing up. Cream cups varies a lot from almost white to kind of a yellowy orange here. Again, this is related to poppies. There were fields and fields of this. Penstemon, this penstemon just takes your breath away. I can't even describe whatever color that is. It's got that purple and blue, and when the sun hits, it's really something. There's one that a lot of people grow in their gardens here called Margarita Pop, which is very closely related to this. BOP, B-O-P, and B-O-P stands for back of porch. It is a hybrid that showed up on the back of somebody's porch up in the Bay Area, and they've bred it in, and I have a couple that I bought at Home Depot last year, of all places. Kept them alive. It doesn't it's very hard to keep alive for a year in San Diego. I don't know why I didn't like San Diego. But a lot of people grow it as an annual. You can buy them in full bloom, and they look just like that. They're a little bit more blue than that. This is the, back to the another native honeysuckle bush. This is in bloom. It smells like a honeysuckle. It's not as strong. I've got one of these in the garden. It blooms about 9 months out of the year. It's not a real showstopper, but it is nice to have something that doesn't need any water that blooms 9 months out of the year. It's also in Cuyamaca. I only got one picture of this. I should have more, but I don't know why I don't have more of this. This is Golden Star. This is another bulb. These used to grow on our hill here in Mission Hills, but they disappeared over the time. I see these everywhere when I hike, and this one only has one flower, but usually all these flowers around here are open. There were thousands of these up in the Cuyamacas, and last month Scott and I hiked along the Sweetwater River in Hamul, and there were hundreds of them there too, which kind of surprised me because I kind of think of them more as a mountain flower. And then this was also up there. This is, I'm not even trying to say the botanic name, fringed spine flower. You don't notice this every year. This is less than ½ inch across that flower, but it makes these huge hot pink mats on the hills. It is native only to San Diego County. There is tons of it blooming on I-8 right now underneath the Mariposa lilies, which I was kind of surprised to see that the other day up near Verona. Not Verona. What's the other casino up there? The big one on I-8. Do not Google this name. You'll get really scary pictures. But its common name is soft blowwives. I was warned never Google that name from somebody in England because we were trying to tell them what this is. It's not a dandelion. It's related, but these little things look like fiber optics. And when the sun hits them, I'm not sure if this is a seed or the flower. I've never known. It looks like the flower to me. But when you see one of these in the distance, it looks like the way the sunlight refracts off of that thing, it just glows white, and you're like, how does it do that? So this is the best picture I could get of one. It's about 2.5 inches, 2 inches across, I guess or so. That's everywhere in the county too. This is another penstemon. This is scarlet bugler. This one is pretty predominant in most of our mountain areas. There's a whole bunch of it in Cuyamaca around the campground. This has definitely evolved for hummingbirds. This long tubular flower is just made for hummingbirds. It's weird though, I rarely see hummingbirds on it when I'm up there, but that's the only thing I know that could pollinate that. We have several species of native milkweeds. This one actually grows in the moist ground around Lake Cuyamaca, and it comes up really late in June. That flower has about 6.5 inches across, and the plant's about 3 feet tall. It's quite spectacular. Obviously, it feeds our native monarchs. And also up there was this plant mixed in with it, which is an Indian paintbrush. They call it the lesser Indian paintbrush. The interesting thing about it, it's about 2.5 feet tall, so it's taller than the other ones. But its flowers are smaller and not as noticeable. But boy, there was sure a lot of that growing up there last year. And mixed in was these incredible blue delphiniums. There were go around the lake on Highway 79 toward Julian. There's a grass field on the left. There were hundreds and hundreds of these there. I've never seen them before, so that was kind of a surprise. Meanwhile, back home here, this is kind of an indicator species of Southern California. This is, it used to be Yucca whipplei, but it's now Hespero Yucca whipplei. I grew these from seeds from one up in Palomar Mountain about 15 years ago, and I had one bloom last year, and I had another one bloom this year. And they're quite spectacular. They're kind of everywhere out in our chaparral. And I took seeds off of this one, and I've already got more started, so I'll have some bloom when I'm 80. This is it up close. They're just spectacular. Interesting story on this. It has this very specific pollinator. There's a yucca moth. It actually is the only thing that can pollinate it. It comes into the flower. It cuts a little hole in the ovary. It lays a couple of eggs in there. Its pupa then fertilizes the flower, and the flower matures, and they live off the inside of the flower and the seed head. And then it also releases a lot of seed after that. And that's the only thing that pollinates this. So I was surprised because this is my second one that blooms. There's not a lot of these in our part of the county. And I didn't think the yucca moth was around, but mine last year said seed. So that kind of shocked me because that means there's some nearby or some other people have yuccas nearby that are blooming. That moth pollinates most of the yuccas in the desert. One of my favorite places for wildflowers is Torrey Pines. This is the North Preserve, which many people don't know about. This is the part of Torrey Pines over here where most people hike, and here's, of course, the Torrey Pines State Beach. But above Del Mar, there's a very similar looking terrain. Trails are way rougher. And the reason we went there, oh, well, we'll get to that in a minute. This is back in the regular part of Torrey Pines. I just had to put this picture in. This is a native Opuntia, just about ready to open flowers. This is our deerweed, which is kind of everywhere. It's just a yellow weed, looks like something in the pea family. And this is a native yucca. This yucca is the Mojave yucca. It's one of those weird plants. It grows on the cliffs in Torrey Pines. If you've ever been to Yucca Point, that's the plant that's out there. Beautiful flowers in March. And it also grows all over the Mojave Desert. So it doesn't grow any place in the world, but those two places. Well, it grows over in Arizona a little bit. But it's kind of weird that this plant has such an odd distribution. They grow right above the cliffs on the ocean and then all the way on the hot desert. But anyway, Torrey Pines, lovely place. Oops, I don't have a label on that. I think that's in the desert. Sorry, I forgot to take that one out. Torrey Pines has a lot of western blue-eyed grass. This also is native on my property here in Mission Hills. It came with our property. I have quite a bit of it. It's a little bit weedy, actually. You see this everywhere, everywhere but the desert in San Diego, and it goes all the way up through California. Very easy to grow, great garden plant, can take summer water if you have it. It won't bloom in the summer, but this year it's been blooming since February, and it's just now finishing up, so that's pretty good. It's related to irises. Very easy one to grow. Fausto talked about one a couple of weeks ago, a shorter version that you can grow that they had at the nursery. This is Lenianthus, this incredible blue or pink flower that grows right above the cliffs also in Torrey Pines. I had to put this in here because it's so common. Encilia californica, this is the bush sunflower. Caltrans has started using this heavily. It's all over the freeways now. I don't even remember it 20 years ago, but it's everywhere now. It's the yellow flowers that you just see, nobody pays much attention to, but they're everywhere. It blooms quite a bit, likes full sun, does go dormant in the summer. Celines, this red southern pink, is kind of sprinkled all over California. I think the name is interesting, Southern Pink. It's called a pink not because of the color. It's called pinks because the edges look like they were cut with pinking shears. Any other pinks are much more pronounced. They really look like somebody took a pinking shears to their edge. There's a ton of plants that are Celines that are from Europe that people grow in their gardens here. We have a native snapdragon. This is Nuttall snapdragon. I found this growing on our property 3 years ago. I propagated it just by sticking it in the ground. I had a ton of them last year. I've only got one of them this year. This shows up real heavily in Torrey Pines and other places along the coast. That's about the actual size of the flowers. So it has pretty big flowers for a wildflower. Big bush though. Salvia clevelandii, I threw that in just because this plant, though this is a great shot of the flower, this is what you smell when you go in the chaparral. It's not Salvia clevelandii, it's another salvia. This to me just says chaparral. It's that wonderful herby, kind of makes you hungry smell that predominates in the chaparral. Big bushes. Blue Dix, it's got a new name. I can't say the old one. I can't say the new one either. At any rate, this is a bulb. These grow all over California. I see them out on the road out to at the end, Point Loma. They're often out there. They're kind of sprinkled around everywhere. They bloom like mad. Usually you get like a couple of flowers. Last year you got these big flower heads that look like onions. But this is why I went to the North Annex last year. This is another delphinium. I heard of it. I'd never seen it in bloom. We had a super bloom on the north side. This plant gets 6 to 8 feet tall. And there were hundreds of them out there growing out of the sand, out of that red, rocky, dry dirt with no leaves out there, and just incredible bloom. Turns out it's not very rare. I think I usually don't see it because it blooms really late. I usually don't hike after June because it's too hot. But at any rate, I think that was unusual for them to be that many of them out there. And mixed in with them was my favorite wildflower, the Calahortus, or the Weeds Mariposa lily. I'm going to bore you here with a bunch of different shots of them because they were just incredible this year. And these are all in Torrey pines. Same plant that was growing up in the Cuyamacas.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, just hard to beat that. I wish we could grow them. I see the bulbs for sale every now and then, but I bought them one year and nothing came up. I've never tried them again. They tell me it's like 6 years and you might get a flower or two.
Mm.
I used to see them up on Penasquitos Canyon too, before they put in all those houses. They were everywhere up there. This one against an Apuntia. This is kind of my final slide. This is agave shy-eye. Agave shy-eye is, do you know agave blue glow? It's pretty common in gardens these days. They crossed agave shy-eye with agave attenuata. Agave attenuata is that soft leaf agave that's from the Caribbean. You would not think these two species would cross. They got from that agave blue glow, which doesn't look like either of the parents. Anyway, one of the parents is agave shy-eye. Agave shy-eye is everywhere on the cliffs when you go to Baja, just south of the border. The only native stand that was left in the United States was where the Borderfield Wall is, and they tore it out in the 1980s. It was a big scandal because they bulldozed it all. So it does show up in Cabrillo. Cabrillo claims it's native. I'm suspicious that it wasn't planted. At least the ones that are there now are planted. And this one is in the parking lot, so it's definitely planted. And this bloom is about 16 feet tall. I mean, I could barely get a shot of it. It was so tall. And very easy to grow. They have a few up in Torrey pines. I'm almost positive those are planted because they just don't look like they're native at all. And there's the few over there in Cabrillo, and they've replanted them in Borderfield State Park, which they bulldozed them again this year. So they're replanting them a third time. But the biggest stand in the United States was sadly, there was a big protest. I remember that back in the 80s when they were widening the border wall because they took out this plant. The only place it grew in the United States was right there on the border. Anyway, beautiful plant. But what I want to show you about it was this.
Oh. Oh, that's so cool.
And it was a bird show. There was quite a few hummingbirds and other birds, and they're all waiting in line to get there. But anyway, everybody's just walking by. Nobody paid any attention to it. There were 5 of these in bloom in the parking lot in December this year. So anyway, that is my talk on the Superbloom for 2019. Were there any questions, Martha?
First, I don't see any questions right now, but I just want to thank you. That was fabulous. The photos are amazing, and I didn't know of all these places out there right here in our own backyard. So now we all have places we can go explore, and maybe next year see another Superbloom. We'll see. But yeah. Thank you so much, Jim. It was great. And if anyone has questions, if we unmute, if anyone wants to say anything or ask anything.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah.
Are any of these, such as the native peony or the native clematis, I know that wildflowers kind of thrive on neglect and sort of, not so much in the general gardens. But are any of the growers trying to hybridize them? So maybe we'll have a cross between a native and, say, a peony that we normally can't grow here?
Nobody's working on peonies that I know of, and the other one you picked on is ceanothus. I've killed countless.
The other one's clematius.
Oh, clematis.
Uh-huh.
The clematis you can grow. I have it on my chain link fence. It hasn't done very well, but that one you see for sale. Recon, which has got a new name down in Imperial Beach, sells it occasionally, and you just see that one occasionally for sale. There's a ton of them you can grow. I'm actually finding them at Home Depot, which is kind of surprising to me, and they're coming out of the grower in North County. The problem is their plants they're more like annuals because they're really, really healthy. It turns out with the natives, I've kind of learned this trick over time. You really want to put in something small that's almost barely anything in the pot and let it get established for a year. And it's much happier. The other one is Moosa Creek sells tons of natives. Fausto carries their line, and so does Walter Anderson and a couple other nurseries. I don't have as much success with their stuff, partly because they plant it in this really light, airy mix, so they can water it every day and not kill it in the nursery. But when I bring that home and put it in my clay soil, I can't keep it wet. It just rains so fast that I kill it, and I have clay soil. So I've learned that the ones that I buy from Recon, they have about 4 sales a year down at the border. They also do all the Caltrans is doing all native plants now when they do any freeway work. They're the ones who provide all their plants, and they only produce stuff down there that grows in San Diego County that's native, which your probability of success goes way up when it's native to San Diego, because you're in San Diego. Like the ceanothus and stuff that most people sell at the nurseries, you kill them because they're all hybridized for the Bay Area, and they just don't like our climate down here. That's my.
I just didn't know if they were trying to cross them in any way.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of ceanothus that have been hybridized already, but I do better with the species ones. And to be honest, if you go to look at the ones that are growing in the wild, I don't know why you wouldn't want that in your garden. You can grow it.
I loved your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. The white one that you see at Torrey Pines that blooms in February, that's starting to show up a lot of places lately. I've planted on my hill. It's very slow, but that one here, you can just plant on a dry hill and it'll get to be an 8-foot bush in a few years, they say, and it blooms really early. So they're around.
Okay, thanks.
Would you be willing to make like a map that and put it out, like a PDF of a map? So we know some of this stuff comes.
No, I tried to do a map. I'm not gonna. I've tried every time I've ever tried to do a map, I've failed. So no.
Well, I just cheat. I take one that's already made and then I blank it out except for what I want.
Yeah, I don't like. That's actually why I like the iPhone. I can click on the photo and I can bring the map up and see where I took the photo. I love that. But I was going to put a map next to each picture, but I couldn't get it to work. I would be spending days to get that done. So,
Well, back to the peony. Why don't we get peonies to grow here? I mean, they grow.
Need a winter chill. They need a winter chill. I know people grow peonies, and the way they grow them here is they go out in the winter every day or two, and they throw an ice bucket on them. Day after day after day. And that fakes your winter chill. Well, see, it still doesn't work. And then not only that, peonies only bloom for like a week.
I don't care.
There's so much other stuff you can grow here. So, that's a lot of work.
Refrigerating them doesn't work either.
What?
I tried refrigerating them like tulips.
No, that doesn't work. You have to have them in the ground.
I've gotten one bud.
Go buy them at Home Depot. They have them. You can bloom. Just buy these. Yeah, I wish somebody would hybridize.
Any other questions for Jim? No. It was a lovely presentation, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Really appreciate it.
See you at the garden walk. Oh, wait, I guess a meeting before that.
What? You better be there.
Thank you very much. Beautiful presentation. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm glad we recorded it so other people who couldn't make it will be able to enjoy all that.
Well, and I can go back and see what I missed.